bring in our Europe correspondent, Francis Collings, who joins us now from the German capital. Francis, as I was watching your news package, one of the things that stood out was this love-hate relationship that one of the people that you spoke to was talking about. Let's take this one step up to the top of the diplomatic or statements food chain. How well do you think German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan know each other? What is the state of the relations between the two countries?
I think they know each other very well, Ali Jean. They certainly meet on a regular basis. They talk on a regular basis. I think I counted 5 times in the last year they've met at a variety of locations. If it's not been here in Germany, if it's not been at the G20 in Hamburg recently, they've been meeting elsewhere. They have an understanding. Of course, they had to deal with each other on a fairly intensive level when the refugee crisis was at its zenith, I guess about 18 months ago, because a lot of refugees, as we know, came to Europe. Many of them, of course, ended up in Germany, and they came from Turkish shores primarily. So that was one major area of concern and discussion. So the relationship is good. It does seem to be, as I say, one of mutual understanding, but it doesn't stop them from being very open and being very honest publicly about how they feel about the politics in each country. They've both made very strong statements, and perhaps it is the mark of a decent relationship, of a good understanding, that they can be exceedingly firm and in some cases quite angry with each other or with each other's countries over various decisions, and yet still maintain that level of understanding and mutual respect that seems to be prevalent.
Let's talk about that feeling of politics. You mentioned that there were more than 3 million, nearly 3 million Turks living in Germany. How do the Turks living abroad feel about politics back home?
Well, they're very connected to it. I've spent a fair bit of time in this city. In fact, I used to live here over 20 years ago. And in areas to the south of where I am, we're near the Tiergarten part of the centre of Berlin. Areas like Neukölln and Kreuzberg, they've long been Turkish suburbs. People who came here as what they call Gastarbeiters many years ago, invited here to work in the post-war years in the 1960s and 70s primarily. But there have been mistakes made along the way. Many people who came here, who've been here for a long time, don't or struggle to get legal recognition here. We interviewed one chap we spoke to who was here legally as a guest worker some 25 years ago, and was telling me the other day that he used to make a tidy living by getting bits of concrete, spray painting them and selling them off as parts of the Berlin Wall when they weren't. But he said that was what he was reduced to. There was a difference between being invited legally and actually having the right to work here. So in that respect, many people still look back to Turkey. They still watch Turkish TV. There are Turkish newspapers and Turkish magazines. And the divisions that you will see in Turkish politics can be reflected at ground level here. Certainly that's one of the reasons that the German politicians have cited when they didn't want any rallies ahead of the presidential referendum in April in Turkey to take place on German soil. They said they didn't want politics to be played out locally. And as you say, over 3 million people live here. Over 1.4 million people had the right to vote in that election and other elections back home. So if you are living in a country, if you've been here many years, but you can still vote back in the homeland and you're still watching TV, there's very much an involvement with what is going on in Turkey. And anyone we've spoken to, and I was here a few months ago covering that presidential referendum, and certainly in the last few days, they will tell you exactly what they think about Turkish politics. Primarily, that seems to be their concern, more than perhaps what is happening in the Reichstag, not far from where I am at the moment in Berlin.
All right. Our Europe correspondent, Francis Collings, thank you very much for joining us here.